Myth. What an interesting word. It's a word we hear all the time in our culture. We hear it very, very often. And unfortunately, in my own opinion, it's one of the most misunderstood words in our American culture. Of course, the understanding of myth in our culture is that it's a falsehood. Well, nothing could be further from the truth. A myth is a story to get to a much deeper story. It's a language, if you will, to get at things that are hard to understand. That's why we have music, and that's why we have poetry, because we're trying to express our hearts and things beyond our understanding. And these ancient myths that we hear about, the Greek and Roman myths and other myths as well, they help address difficult circumstances like the suffering of the innocent, like famine, like love, and like death, and things that humans still experience. And they experience these things as well, and to try to understand them, they used myths. So a myth is a story to get at something much deeper. It's not a falsehood. For example, if a husband says to his wife, I'm going to climb the highest mountain and I'm going to swim the deepest sea. Well, my response to that is, no, he won't. No, he won't. But in fact, he is trying to tell a very, very deep truth. And so he has to use symbolic, almost mythical language, if you will, to get at what he's really feeling and what is really important to him. I'd like to share with you a classic example from Greek mythology that would help explain a deeper truth. All of us have had experiences where we find life frustrating. Well, you may have heard of the myth of Sisyphus. Sisyphus was an ancient Corinthian king. This is how the myth goes. And the gods got very angry with him over some incident, and they condemned him forever and ever and ever to roll a rock up a hill to try and get it over the top to the other side. But of course, every time he got it just to the top, it came rolling right back down on him and he had to start again. Now, the question with this myth is, do you think that ever happened? Well, it certainly didn't ever happen. But the more important question for myth is that story true? Have you ever had a Sisyphus kind of day where everything you've done is the rock's just rolling right back down on you? What kind of day did you have? I had a Sisyphus day. See, the idea of a myth is to get at this deeper truth, this deeper meaning. And so when we say a myth is a falsehood, it's a terrible misunderstanding. It's an unfortunate misunderstanding of the real meaning of the myth. It takes away the appreciation for the ancients and what they were trying to say when they were trying to explain thunder, lightning, love, famine. And so, my friends, when we talk about myth, in the classical sense, in the proper sense, we're not talking about a falsehood at all. In fact, it's the opposite of a falsehood. It's a story to get to a deeper truth. That's why we have poetry. That's why we have music. That's why we have art. We're trying to say something that's much, much deeper because humans, you see, are meaning makers. And we use these myths and these stories to help us to give meaning to all of those things around us that we experience, simply like falling in love. So I just suggest to you that maybe when you hear the word myth, you might want to rethink precisely what it really means and how it might be used and how it should properly be used.